Hello, everybody. I'm going to give you a quick little mini lesson on how to factor. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to share some problems with you. I'd like you to put these down in your notebook and take extra notes if you are confused, but hopefully a lot of this you'll remember from the previous years. So the first thing I want to talk about is factoring steps. These are going to get more complicated in Algebra 2 compared to geometry and Algebra 1. But the first two things we're going to do is just refresh your memory on what you did last year. So very first thing when you approach an algebra expression or equation is to take out a greatest common factor. I'll give you an example on that in the next slide. The second step, then, this is what you did last year and the previous year, is to get your expression or equation into factored form. And there's two methods to do that. One is guess and check, and one of them is split the middle. So I'm going to kind of go through both of them to give you an idea. I prefer the guess and check method because I'm a couple of reasons. Reason number one is I'm really good at adding and subtracting integers. And reason number two is I'm pretty good at my times tables, multiplication tables. Split the middle is for those of you that struggle a little bit with that kind of stuff. It goes a little slower. Sometimes it's about the same, but a little slower. But you do have to remember some steps when you do split the middle. So I'm going to explain split the middle in another slide, but right now I'm going to just kind of factor this one by guess and check. Like I said on the last one, the first thing is to try to pull out a greatest common factor. So when you look at the three terms I have, this is called a trinomial because it has three terms. It looks like a 2 goes into 2, 4, and 6. So I'm going to pull out a GCF of 2. However, all three of these also have an x in them. And this only has a single x, where this one here in the middle has x squared and the other one is x cubed. So I'm going to pull out a 2x from all of these. So when I pull out a 2x, I am left with, if I take a 2x out of 2x cubed, I'm left with 2 extra x's. This is undoing the distributive property. That's what factoring is. It's undoing FOIL, multiplication. So the next term here is 4x squared. If I take a 2 out of 4, I'm left with 2, keeping the sign as minus, and I took one of those 2 x's out, so I'm left with an x. And the last term is still a minus. So I took a 2 out of 6, so I'm left with 3, and I took the x out, so there is no variable in that last one. Now, whenever you have one of these, this is called a quadratic, you really should attempt to factor this. Sometimes you can't, but in a lot of these you can. So the way I like to do it is I like to think of it as FOIL and do guess and check. So for this one, this is the first. That is the result, going backwards from FOIL, of these two multiplied together. So the only thing that can give you x squared is x times x. Those have to go in the first spot. The second spot, you skip over the negative 2x because the negative 2x is the combination of outers and inners. So you skip over that 2x and you go right to the last. Now 3 is kind of easy. If it was 6, it'd be a little bit more difficult, but 3, the only thing that 3 could be is 3 and 1. So you could put a 1 here and a 3 here. Now, if it was 6, you might have a 2 and a 3 or a 1 and a 6, and that's why it's called guess and check. You'd guess one of them and check it, and if it doesn't work, you'd guess another one. So now I need to make sure this is all accurate, and that's when I go to this middle term, the outers and inners. So these are my outers and these are my inners. They need to add up to this middle term, negative 2x. So the outers is 3x, that big long arc here, and the inners is 1x. And if I were to add these together, I'd get 4x. So I don't think that that's right. I don't want a 4, I want a negative 2. So I bet if I put a negative on here, then this becomes negative 2x when I add them. So the 3 gets the negative and the 1 gets the positive. This is kind of an easier one to start with, but this is what's called your factored form. You're going to find that easier to work with through many of the chapters that we continue on with. As for this one, it's usually an easier factoring when there's a 1 here, and this has a 1. So in this case, I will also do guess and check, and then on the next one, I'll do both guess and check and split the middle. So in this case, I cannot pull out a greatest common factor because there are no x's in this spot. So I can't pull out an x. And there's no greatest common factor between 1, 5, and 24, other than 1, but you never do the 1. So once again, and by the way, you could pause this right now if you think you got it and try to do it on your own. But if you're still with me, I start with the first one of FOIL. And x squared has got to be x and x. I know there's a 1 there, but you could write 1x and 1x. And then you jump to the last, 24. Now, 24 is complicated. 1 times 24 is 24. 2 times 12. 3 times 8. 4 times 6. All of these could work. But you kind of are thinking about this 5 when you have a 1 here too. And I'm pretty positive it's this one because I know I can add those to get a 5. That's a 3, by the way, in the middle there. 3. So I normally, if I had no clue, would pick the 2 closest together. And then I'd go up the list until I got to 24. Why do I do that? It's because the closer together they are, the more popular they are for an answer, just through experience. So I'm pretty sure it's 3 and 8. If you wanted to try 4 and 6, you can, but you're going to find it doesn't work. So now I've done the first, I've done the last. I need to check the outers and inners. So the outers is 8x and the inners is 3x. So 8x and 3x can be added together to get positive 5 if the 8 is positive and the 3 is negative. And if you foiled this back, you'd get your original problem. And now the last one, the number 3, becomes the complicated one. I first of all should start with that greatest common factor. So I look here, we got a 6, 31, and 40. Well, 6 is the smallest, so I'll just kind of think about 6. 6 is a factor of 6, but it's not a factor of 31. 2 is a factor of 6, but it's not a factor of 31. 3 is a factor of 6, and if you weren't sure, you do 31 divided by 3, but that doesn't work either. There is no GCF here. So the next thing, if I'm going to do guess and check, I'm going to put it actually way over here so I can do split the middle in a moment. In this case, I'm going to figure out what multiplies to 6x squared. It could be this. Now, it also could be 1x and 6x. I just don't know. Try the closest ones together. 40 is a complicated one. 1 and 40, 2 and 20, 3, nope, 4 and 10, 5 and 8, 6, nope, 7, nope, 8. Okay, I'm back to 8 and 5. So this is my list. Try the one closest together first because you'll have less guessing and checking to do. So I'm going to try 5 and 8. And then I go to I'm thinking of FOIL always. I'm thinking of my outers and inners. Do they produce 31? My outers is 16x. My inners is 15x. I actually picked the right one. Good job, Shplesky. Now this is a negative 31. So notice how I never put the signs in till the end. But if I put a negative on both of them, 6 and 5 is 11, carry the 1. This is 31x. So I knew I did it right if they're both negative. And by my strategy of picking the ones closest together, I got it. Now, if that didn't work, I would have flipped the 5 and 8. And I'm just going to do this to show you one that doesn't work. 2x and 3x. And I would try 8 and 5. This is 10. This is 24. 10 and 24 does not add up to 31, no matter which one's negative. If that didn't work, I'd change the 8 and 5 into 4 and 10. This is why guess and check can take a long time unless you're really good at thinking ahead to multiplication and addition. And if that didn't work, I'd try 2 and 20 or 20 and 2. If that didn't work, I'd try 1 and 40 and 40 and 1. And if none of those 8 worked, I would switch the 2x and 3x to 1x and 6x and start the list again. So this actually, there's 4 here, but if you flip them around, that makes 8. And if you change this to 1 and 6, that makes 16 checks. That could be a long time, but I find this method works a little faster. What's this split the middle thing? Now, I know a lot of you like this. So split the middle. Some people use like this graphic organizer. They multiply 6 times 40. I'm going to grab a calculator here. So 6 times 40, if you're ever in doubt, you should always use a calculator. 6 times 40 is 240. So some people will do a little graphic organizer and put a 240 here, and then a negative 31 in the middle. The key for this is to put these together. You could have absolutely did that on this one the same way. 1 and 24 is 24, but this one here is 240. Now we need to figure out what multiplies to 240, but adds to 31. So I'm going to start with 1. 1 and 240. There's no way that'll add to 31. 2 and 220. No way. Does 3 go into 240? Yes, it does. 240 divided by 3 is 80. Can that add to 31? No, I'm getting closer. If that's a negative, I think that I got 77, and that's way better than subtracting these two and getting 218. So I'm getting closer. So I think 4 goes in there. 240 divided by 4. That's 4 and 60. Now I still don't get 31. I know it's even. It's ends in a 0, so I know that a 5 goes in there. So 5 and 48. 5 minus 48 is 43. I'm really close to 31. So how about 6? 6 and 40. I'm going to have to make a new list. I'm running out of room here. 6 and 40. 6 and 40, if you subtract them, that gives you 34. Oh, I'm not there yet. 7? No, how about 8? 8 and 30. So I still don't have it yet. So this is kind of frustrating, and this is why guess and check can be frustrating. So let's try 240 divided by 9. 240 divided by 9. Nope, that's a decimal. 240 divided by 10. Oh, I should know that one. 10 and 24. So 10, whoops. 10, my marker is going here, and 24. No, that's 34 if I add. 34 if I add, but if I subtract, I get 14. I still don't get 31. 240 divided by 12. 12 and 20. I'm almost there. 12 and 20 does not add and subtract to 240. How about 240 divided by 15? 15 and 16. 15 and 16 can add to 240. I finally did it. Now that takes patience, just like guess and check does. So if I do a 15 here and a 16 here, that kind of helps my graphic organizer. They both have to be negative, because a negative times a negative is a positive 240, and a negative 15 and a negative 16 add up to negative 31. So now guess and check, what do I do? So let's just kind of split this over here. And guess and check, I'm going to leave the 6x squared. I'm going to leave a big gap. I'm going to put the 40 over here. Now I'm going to put these two numbers here, the 15 and the 16, but they're minus. You put x's on them because it needs to add to not 31, but 31x minus 16x. The order doesn't matter. Then you put parentheses around the first two and parentheses around the second two. And then you just pull out a GCF of this one. What goes into 6 and 15? I think a 3x, because there's an x in both. So if I do that, I'm left with 2x. 3 times 2 is 6. And if I take a 3 out of 15, I'm left with a 5. On the second one, I can take out from 16 and 40, I think it's a 4. How about an 8? Ha ha ha. I'm going to take out an 8. 4 works, but 8's bigger. You need these parentheses to be the same. So that's why I knew I needed a 2 there. So that's why I knew I needed a 2 here. Ooh, but now I got to think about my negatives. 8 times 2 is 16, but it's not negative. But these two parentheses need to be the same. So the 8 I should have taken out should have been a negative. If I take an 8 out of 40, I get minus 5. Because remember, if you took a -8 out, then negative times a negative, if I distribute it, is positive 40. When you get to this form, now it's just memorization. These first two go together, 3x minus 8. And then the parentheses just merge into 1 as long as they are the same. So as you look at this, I did get it. I kind of strategically picked a challenging guess and check one. I'm sorry, like one to guess and check and split the middle because I wanted to give you a really hard one. And we did some of these last year. Now, if you're a little weak at this for today, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure that you're fine. So thanks everybody for listening. I appreciate it. Have a good day.